Li Yong built a $4 billion empire on one obsession: total control. His diet, his schedule, his image, the exact type of woman allowed within 10 feet of him. Every variable in his life had been measured, managed, and accounted for, because Li Yong had learned at 17 years old, standing in a hospital hallway in his school uniform, that the moment you stop controlling the things you love disappear. So he controlled everything. His meals were weighed to the gram. His insulin pump was checked before his phone every single morning. His calendar was blocked in 15-minute increments. His relationships, if you could call them that, lasted exactly 3 months, never one day longer, and always ended before anyone got close enough to see the parts of him he kept in the dark. And the women, always the same: slim, polished, image perfect. The kind of woman who looked correct on his arm at industry events and asked nothing of him that he was not already prepared to give. 15 years. Not one deviation. Until the morning Li Yong woke up in the presidential suite of the Joseon Palace Hotel in Seoul. Head pounding, memory completely gone, glucose monitor reading 54, dangerously, critically low, and found a 250-pound black woman sleeping beside him like she had built that bed herself. He checked his pump first. Of course he did, because his body had been quietly shutting down for hours while he lay unconscious. And nobody in that room had called for help. Nobody had panicked. Nobody had done anything. Except her. He did not know that yet. He would find out later, much later, that sometime in the night while he was completely unreachable, she had found his glucose tablets on the nightstand, read the dosage instructions on the label with calm, unhurried eyes and handled it. Quietly. Alone. Without waking him. Without making it about herself. But right now, in this moment, Li Yong knew none of that. Right now he only knew 3 things. He had lost an entire night. His body had nearly failed him in his sleep. And the woman beside him, natural hair glorious against the white pillow, full lips slightly parted, 250 pounds of complete and total peace, was the single most disruptive thing that had ever happened to his perfectly controlled life. She opened her eyes, dark brown, immediately, completely awake. 1 second of silence. Then fury, clean, justified, and fully loaded. She grabbed the pillow and swung. "What did you do to me?" I didn't. Do not tell me you don't know." Li Yong, for billion-dollar empire, insulin pump, the most controlled man in all of Seoul, threw up both arms and had absolutely nothing. Stay right here, because what happened in that hotel room while Li Yong was unconscious is the most important thing in this entire story. And if you leave now, you will miss the one detail that changes everything. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Send this to someone who needs a good story right now. It is a city of 12 million people moving at the speed of ambition, dressed in the armor of achievement, performing success so convincingly that even the failures look polished. It is a city where a man can build an empire and still eat dinner alone every night of his life and call that discipline instead of loneliness. It is also, for Chantel Davis, the city that was supposed to be her second chance. She had not come here chasing anything romantic. She had come here chasing survival, the quiet, unglamorous, necessary kind. The kind that requires you to pack 2 suitcases, say goodbye to everything familiar, and bet what little you have left on the one thing nobody can take from you. In Chantel's case, that thing was her hands, her palate, the instinct she had developed over 20 years of cooking for people she loved, refined over 4 years of building a business and sharpened, in the specific way that betrayal sharpens everything, by a man named Marcus Webb who took $47,000 of her savings and left a misspelled lease agreement where a future used to be. She was not bitter. She was focused. There is a difference, and Chantel Davis knew exactly what it was. Li Yong had also come to Seoul chasing something. Except he had been born here, built here, and had spent the last 15 years constructing a life so airtight that the city itself seemed to bend around his schedule. He was not chasing survival. He was chasing something much harder to name, the feeling that the empire he had built was finally enough. That somewhere in the square footage of Yang Global's headquarters, in the zeros of his net worth, in the silence of his perfectly ordered penthouse, He had finally paid off a debt that a 17-year-old boy had accumulated in a hospital hallway on a Tuesday afternoon in October. He had not paid it off. He was not even close. These are the two people at the center of this story. Not a CEO and a stranger. Not a scandal and a victim. Two human beings who had both, in completely different languages, been telling themselves the same lie for years, that they were fine, that they had everything handled, that the walls they had built were protection and not prisons. They were wrong, and it would take one engineered disaster, one manufactured night, and one morning neither of them could remember, to begin to prove it. What happened next changed both of them forever. The first thing Chantel registered, before her eyes were fully open, was that the sheets were too expensive. She knew fabric the way she knew flavor, instinctively, immediately, in the body before the brain. These were not hotel sheets. These were not even good hotel sheets. These were the kind of sheets that had their own name, their own thread count listed in a leather folder somewhere, the kind that made you momentarily forget you had no idea where you were or how you had gotten there. Then she remembered she had no idea where she was or how she had gotten there. She sat up. Wrong room. Wrong bed. Wrong everything. Her catering uniform was gone. She was wearing a hotel bathrobe she did not remember putting on. Her natural hair, which she had spent 40 minutes carefully pinning before the gala last night, was completely free, spread around her head in a way that meant someone had removed the pins. She did not remember removing the pins. She looked to her left. Li Yong was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with his back to her, both hands pressed flat on his knees, staring at the floor with the focused stillness of a man conducting an internal emergency. She recognized him immediately. Everyone in Seoul recognized Li Yong. What she did not recognize was any reason for him to be in her bed. Except it was not her bed, which made it considerably worse. His phone was on the nightstand. The screen showed 14 missed calls. 3 from a contact saved as Marcus' chief of staff. 11 from numbers with no names. And a news alert already loading with a headline that made Chantel's blood go cold. Young Global CEO's secret plus-size foreign lover. Photos emerge. She grabbed the phone before she had consciously decided to. Li Yong turned at the movement. Their eyes met for the second time that morning. The first had been approximately 4 minutes ago when she had swung a pillow at his head, and the air between them had not recovered since. She turned the screen toward him. He looked at it for a long time without speaking. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seoul was already fully awake, already moving, already consuming the story with the specific appetite of a city that understood that reputation was currency and scandal was a transaction. Inside the suite, neither of them moved. Then Li Yong stood up, straightened his shirt, and said 4 words in a voice that gave nothing away. "Don't talk to anyone." Chantel looked at him. "Excuse me?" He was already reaching for the room phone. She woke up in the most expensive sheets she had ever felt in her life, with no memory, no uniform, and her carefully pinned natural hair completely free, and someone had removed those pins. Someone had looked at her while she slept. "I need you to sit with that, because that detail, right there, that's the first crack in Li Yang's control. And neither of them knows it yet. Keep watching, because this is just the beginning of something neither of them is ready for." Subscribe to Echoes of Love, turn on every notification, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if this is your very first time here, welcome. You just found the channel that will make you feel every single thing. We tell the stories that real life forgot to finish. Stay with us. The best is yet to come. Marcus Lim arrived in 12 minutes. Chantel knew he was important the moment he walked through the door, not because of the suit, though the suit was exceptional, but because of the way Li Yang's entire posture shifted when he entered. Not softer, straighter. The way people stand when the one person who knows all their secrets walks into a room and they need to remind themselves they are still in charge. Marcus set his tablet on the coffee table and turned it to face them both. 47 news outlets. 6 trending hashtags. A drone photograph taken through the floor-to-ceiling window that showed them in the bed with a clarity that made Chantel's stomach drop completely through the floor. "How?" Li Yang's voice was quiet. the quiet of controlled fury. Drone. Sent from the building across the street at approximately 5 a.m. Someone knew which room, which window, and which angle. Marcus paused. This was not accidental. Chantel was the first to speak. So someone drugged us, set us up, and leaked it before we even woke up. She said it flatly, the way you state something you need to hear aloud before you can process it. And now my face is on every screen in South Korea. 12 countries, Marcus said. As of 20 minutes ago. She laughed. A single short sound with no humor in it whatsoever. Lee Yong looked at her when she laughed. Something moved behind his eyes. Not quite guilt, not quite admiration, but living in the neighborhood of both. He looked away before she could identify it. Marcus folded his hands. There is a way through this, but you both need to hear it fully before you decide anything. What he proposed was simple in the way that only impossible ideas are simple. They were already a story. The only question was which version the world believed. A scandal or a love story accidentally uncovered. Lee Yong would offer Chantel 300 million Korean wons. Full catering contracts across every Yong global event for 2 years. Connections that would transform Sweet Pressure from a struggling startup into a nationally recognized brand overnight. In exchange, 30 days. Convincing public appearances. Marcus finished. The room went quiet. Lee Yong turned to Chantel. Fully, completely, for the first time since the pillow, and looked at her the way people look at someone they are genuinely uncertain about. Not dismissively. Not with pity. With something that felt dangerously close to respect. You don't have to, he said quietly. Somehow, from a man who controlled everything, those 4 words felt like the most honest thing anyone had said to her in years. Chantel held his gaze. I have 3 conditions, she said. Something at the corner of his mouth moved in a direction that was not quite neutral. Tell me. She could have walked away. She had every reason to. The scandal wasn't her fault. The deal wasn't her idea. And the man standing across from her had built an entire life on keeping women exactly where he could manage them. But she looked him dead in the eye and said, I have 3 conditions. And the look on his face in that moment, that tiny thing at the corner of his mouth that was not quite neutral, that is the beginning of his undoing. Don't you dare leave now. The first thing Chantel did when she walked into Lee Yang's apartment was open every window she could find. Not because she was warm, because the place smelled like nobody lived there and she needed it to stop. Lee Yong watched her from across the room with the expression of a man watching someone rearrange his internal organs without consent. Those are climate-controlled, he said. And now they're open, Chantel said pleasantly and moved to the next one. His jaw tightened. She saw it and kept moving. She unpacked in 20 minutes. Her grandmother's cast iron skillet went on the stove. Her shea butter and edge control lined the bathroom counter. Her silk bonnet went on the hook behind her bedroom door. She was marking territory and she knew it. So did he. By day 3, the apartment had divided itself into 2 countries with no diplomatic relations. Lee Yang's meal schedule was printed and fixed inside the kitchen cabinet. 7 a.m., 1 p.m., 7 p.m. Specific portions, 0 deviation. His glucose checks happened at intervals so exact that by day 2 Chantel had started feeling them coming before his alarm sounded. A particular stillness that settled over him 30 seconds before he checked his wrist. A slight slowing of whatever he was doing, like his whole body paused to take inventory. She noticed. She catalogued it quietly and said absolutely nothing. What she did instead was cook at every hour that had nothing to do with his schedule. 9 a.m., 3 p.m., midnight if she felt like it. The apartment filled with smells that had never existed in it before. Garlic browning in butter, spices she had carried from Atlanta in small labeled jars, something sweet and warm that had no business being that good. On day 3, he walked through the kitchen and stopped. He stood there for 3 full seconds, not looking at her, looking at the stove, and something crossed his face that he shut down so fast she almost missed it. Almost. It was gone before it arrived. But she had seen it. Hunger. and not for the food. My nutritionist comes Friday, he said, voice flat. Keep your things on the left side of the counter. Chantel said without turning around. That means yes. That means I heard you. The silence that followed was the kind that has weight. She felt him standing behind her, close enough that the air between them had its own temperature, before he turned and walked away. She waited until she heard his bedroom door close. Then she exhaled slowly, looked down at her hands on the counter, and told herself very firmly that whatever that was, it was nothing. She almost believed it. She didn't ask him if he wanted it. She didn't announce that she'd made it. She just slid the plate across the counter and turned back to her biscuits. No refined flour. No sugar. Enough flavor that he wouldn't feel punished. She had studied this man's medical needs without telling him. She had made accommodations for his body without being asked, without making it a moment, without making it about herself. And Li Yong sat down and ate every bite. That plate is the first real thing that passes between them. And neither of them will say so out loud for a very long time. Park Jin-soo called Li Yong at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday with the voice of a man offering help he had already poisoned. The Kong board is nervous, he said smoothly. A CEO with a scandal this size, this close to the merger, Daeho is traditional, Yang. You know this. Perhaps a statement. Something that distances you from the girl. Her name, Li Yong said quietly, is Miss Davis. A pause. Small. Deliberate. Of course, Park said. My concern is only for the company. Li Yong ended the call and stood at his window for a long time, looking at nothing, thinking about everything. He had known Park Jin-soo for 11 years. He had trusted him for 10 of those years. Something about this particular phone call, the timing, the softness of it, the way Park had said the girl with such practiced casualness, had landed wrong in a way he could not yet name. He filed it. He would come back to it. Chantel was in the kitchen when he came downstairs. She had been up since 5 a.m., not from anxiety but from habit, the deep muscle habit of a woman who had spent years starting before the world did. She was making biscuits, from scratch. The kind that required her full body weight pressed into the dough, the kind that her grandmother had made every Sunday without measuring a single thing. Li Yong stopped in the doorway. The kitchen looked like someone had declared joyful war on it. Flour on the counter. A bowl of something that smelled like brown butter and cinnamon sitting next to his precisely organized spice rack. Her cast iron skillet heating on his stove like it owned the place because as far as Chantel was concerned, it did. You cannot eat that, he said. Good thing I'm not making it for you. The sugar content alone. Mr. Lee. She turned around, hands dusted white with flour, looking at him with the calm patience of a woman who had dealt with difficult people her entire professional life. I know your schedule. I know your diet. I know what you can and cannot eat better than you think I do. She held up a separate smaller pan sitting to the left of the stove. Which is why yours has no sugar, no refined flour, and enough flavor that you will not feel like you are being punished. He stared at the pan, then at her. I didn't ask you to do that. No, she agreed, turning back to her biscuits. You didn't. The silence stretched long enough to mean something. He pulled out a stool and sat down at the counter. Not leaving, not speaking, just sitting. In the particular way of a man who has forgotten how to accept something given freely and is trying to remember without admitting he has forgotten. She slid his plate across the counter without looking at him. He ate every bite. Neither of them mentioned it for the rest of the day. But that evening, when Chantel came into the kitchen for water and found his empty plate washed and returned to exactly the shelf she had taken it from, she stood there for a moment with her hand on the cabinet door. He had noticed which shelf. She closed the cabinet quietly and went back to bed before that fact could become anything more than what it was. Subscribe to Echoes of Love, turn on every notification, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if this is your very first time here, welcome. You just found the channel that will make you feel every single thing. We tell the stories that real life forgot to finish. Stay with us. The best is yet to come. Marcus had booked them into Jungsik, one of Seoul's most watched dining rooms, the kind of place where every table had a sight line to every other table and the people sitting at those tables knew exactly what that meant. This was not dinner. This was a broadcast. Chantel stood in front of the mirror in her room in a deep wine-colored wrap dress that Marcus had sent over in her exact size without asking for it, which told her everything she needed to know about how thoroughly these people had researched her before she had agreed to anything. She had retwisted the front of her locks, kept her edges laid, kept her jewelry simple and deliberate. She looked like herself. That was the point. She had made that one of her 3 conditions. She would not perform a version of herself that required her to disappear inside it. Lee Yong knocked once and opened the door before she answered. He stopped. She watched him stop, watched the precise moment his eyes moved over her and something in his face did the thing it kept doing and kept not admitting. It lasted less than 2 seconds. Then the CEO was back, composed, unreachable. "You look appropriate," he said. Chantel picked up her clutch. "And you look like a man who just paid himself a compliment and gave it to me instead." He blinked. She walked past him into the hallway. Inside the restaurant, every eye found them within 30 seconds. She felt it, the specific weight of a room full of people deciding what they think about you before you have touched your water glass. She had felt it her entire life. In boardrooms, in commercial kitchens, in every space that was not built with her in mind. She knew how to carry it without letting it land. Lee Yong pulled her chair out before she reached it. She looked at him. "For the cameras," he said quietly. "Obviously," she said and sat down. But when she reached for the menu and their hands crossed in the narrow space above the table, his fingers brushing the back of hers for exactly 1 second, neither of them moved away as fast as the cameras would have required. The moment dissolved. They both looked at their menus. "The seafood here is exceptional," he said. "I know," Chantel said. "I catered their private event last year." He looked up. "You've been here before?" "Some of us worked our way into these rooms, Mr. Lee." Something shifted in his expression. Not offense. Something quieter and considerably more uncomfortable, recognition. He looked back at his menu. But she noticed his grip on it had tightened. And she noticed she had noticed. And that was the most dangerous thing that had happened all evening. Han So-yeon walked into the Kong pre-merger gala wearing a white dress and a smile that had been sharpened into a weapon. Chantel clocked her the moment she entered. Not because she knew who she was, not yet, but because of the way the room rearranged itself around her arrival. The subtle shift of bodies. The careful avoidance of direct eye contact from people who clearly knew something Chantel did not. She leaned slightly toward Lee Yong. White dress. Far left. "Who is she?" Lee Yong did not look up from the conversation he was holding with a Kong Industries board member. But something in the line of his shoulders changed. A tightening so controlled it was almost invisible. Almost. "Nobody you need to concern yourself with," he said quietly. "That," Chantel said, just as quietly, "is exactly what someone says about a person you absolutely need to concern yourself with." He had no answer for that. Han So-yeon found them 20 minutes later by the drinks table. She approached Chantel first. "Not Lee Yong. Chantel. You must be the famous Miss Davis," she said in flawless English, her smile arriving slightly before her eyes did. "I have to say, you are so much more than I expected from the photographs." The compliment was constructed with surgical precision, built to sound generous while delivering its blade on the way out. Chantel had met this species of woman before, in culinary school, in corporate kitchens, in every room that required her to prove she belonged while everyone else simply arrived. She smiled back with equal warmth and considerably more accuracy. "And you are?" A flicker. "Han So-yeon. Lee Yong and I are old friends." "How lovely," Chantel said. "He has never mentioned you." The flicker became something colder. "We go back many years." Chantel tilted her head. "You know, in my experience, the people worth remembering never have to remind you they exist." Han So-yeon's smile stayed on her face through sheer professional discipline. Lee Yong, standing 2 feet away, made no movement, said nothing. But his hand, which had been at his side all evening, moved to the small of Chantel's back with a quiet deliberateness that had nothing to do with cameras. Han So-yeon saw it. The whole room saw it. She excused herself with perfect composure and walked away. Chantel waited until she was gone. Then, without turning to look at him, "You can move your hand, Mr. Lee." A pause. He did not move it. "I know," he said, and Park Jin-soo, watching from across the room with a glass of whiskey and a phone already open to a contact he should not have had, smiled to himself and typed 3 words. "She is the one." Park Jin-soo is standing across the room with a glass of whiskey and a phone open to a contact he should not have. He watched Li Yang's hand move to Chantel's back. He watched Han So-yeon's smile crack, and he typed 3 words. "She is the one." That message is a threat, and we are about to find out what Park Jin-soo is willing to do with it. At 3 a.m., and what Chantel finds in that kitchen is going to make you hold your breath. Do not go anywhere. She heard it at 3:07 a.m. Not a crash, not a voice, just a sound that was wrong, the specific wrongness of something happening in a space that was supposed to be empty. Chantel was a light sleeper by necessity, the kind of sleep developed over years of being the person a household depended on. She was on her feet before she was fully conscious. The kitchen light was on. Li Yang was on the floor, back against the cabinet, legs extended, glucose monitor in his right hand reading 51. His shirt was damp. His jaw was set in the particular way of a man using every remaining unit of control to appear like he was not in crisis. His eyes found her in the doorway and did something she had not seen them do before. They asked for nothing, which told her everything. She did not gasp, did not panic, did not ask him if he was okay because she could see with her own eyes that he was not okay and the question would cost them both time they did not have. She went to the refrigerator. 3rd shelf. Right side. The orange juice she had placed there on day 4 without telling him. The glucose tablets she had found at a pharmacy 2 weeks in when she noticed his kit running low. The specific crackers listed on the meal schedule she had memorized and never once mentioned memorizing. She sat down on the floor beside him. Not across from him. Not above him. Beside him, at his level, in his space, close enough that he could feel she was there without having to look. She opened the juice and held it out. He took it, drank, said nothing. She waited. For minutes passed in complete silence. His breathing steadied. The color came back to his face slowly, the way dawn comes, not all at once but undeniably. "How long have you known?" he said finally. "Since week 2. You never said anything. You never asked me to." She looked at him then, directly, without softness and without hardness. "And you were already carrying it. You didn't need me making it heavier." Something in his face broke open. Just for a second. Just enough. "My grandmother had type 1, Chantel said quietly. "Managed it until she was 81. She used to say the disease was never the hard part." A pause. "The hard part was letting someone sit on the floor with you without making you feel small for needing them there." Li Yang looked at her. The space between their hands on the cold kitchen floor was approximately 4 inches. He did not close it. But for the first time since she had moved into his space, he did not create more of it either. They sat there in the 3 a.m. quiet of a city that never fully slept. 2 people holding their breath inside a moment neither was ready to name, until his glucose reading climbed back to 74 and the crisis passed. He stood slowly, steadied himself, looked down at her still sitting on the floor. "You should sleep," he said. "So should you," she said. He walked to the doorway, stopped with his back to her. "Chantel." It was the first time he had used her name. Not Miss Davis. Not a pronoun. Her name, in his voice at 3 a.m., in a kitchen that smelled like the ginger tea she had made 4 hours ago. She felt it land somewhere she was not prepared for. "Thank you," he said. Then he was gone. She sat on that kitchen floor for another 3 minutes, hand flat on the cold tile where his had been, telling herself with rapidly decreasing conviction that she was absolutely fine. He used her name for the first time. Chantel. 1 word. But in his voice at that hour, after what they had just shared on that cold floor, it landed somewhere she was not prepared for. And she sat there for 3 more minutes after he left, hand flat on the tile where his had been, telling herself she was fine. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because the next chapter reveals the one secret Lee Yong has kept from literally everyone in his life. A violin case, a dead mother, and 17 years of unpaid guilt. And it is Chantel who tells him the truth he has needed to hear since he was 17 years old. She found it on a Thursday afternoon behind a panel in the storage room she had opened looking for extra hangers. A violin case, black, expensive, sealed so long the latch had stiffened from disuse. No dust on the outside, which meant someone cleaned around it regularly, deliberately, which meant someone knew it was there and had decided over and over again to leave it exactly where it was. Chantel did not open it. She carried it to the living room and set it on the coffee table and went back to the kitchen to finish what she was doing. Lee Yong came home at 6 p.m. She heard the door, heard his keys, heard the particular rhythm of his footsteps that she had learned without intending to, the slight pause at the entrance where he always checked his glucose before removing his jacket. Then silence, the kind that had a shape. She came out of the kitchen and found him standing completely still in the middle of the room, looking at the case on the table with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Every layer of the CEO was gone, every molecule of control. He looked like someone had reached into his chest and pressed directly on the thing he kept most protected. He looked 17 years old. "Where did you find that?" His voice was completely flat. She told him. He sat down on the couch slowly, the way people sit when their legs have made a decision their mind hasn't caught up to yet. He did not touch the case. He looked at it the way you look at something you love and cannot forgive yourself for loving. "You don't have to tell me anything," Chantel said, sitting across from him. "I know," he said, and then he told her everything. His mother, the convenience store uniform, the parking lot, the 7 words he had said to a woman who had worked 3 jobs to put a violin in his hands. Words that had come from a 15-year-old boy who wanted to belong somewhere and did not yet understand the cost of that wanting. The medical file, the skipped appointments, the violin lessons they had paid for. He had not said any of this out loud. Not once. Not to anyone. When he finished, the room held the specific silence of something that has been locked away for a very long time suddenly finding air. Chantel did not move for a long moment. Then she said, "She didn't skip those appointments because of the violin lessons." He looked up. "She skipped them because she was your mother. And your mother looked at you and saw something worth every appointment she ever missed." Her voice was steady and quiet and carried no performance in it whatsoever. "That was her choice, not your debt. You have been paying for something that was never yours to pay." Lee Yong looked at her for so long that the city outside the window cycled through 3 full traffic light changes. "How do you do that?" he said finally. Not a question. Something quieter than a question. "My grandmother," Chantel said simply. "She had 30 years of wisdom and about 4 minutes of patience. You learn to get to what matters." He reached forward and opened the violin case. The instrument inside was perfectly preserved. Strings intact, bridge straight, the wood still carrying its original warmth the way old things carry the memory of when they were new. He ran one finger along the strings. He did not play a single note, but he did not close the case either. And Chantel, watching him sit with something he had been running from for 17 years, felt the last of her carefully constructed distance begin to come apart at the seams in a way she was no longer entirely sure she wanted to stop. She looked away before he could see it on her face. But her hands, folded in her lap, had stopped being still. Marcus arrived at 9 p.m. with no phone call ahead and a USB drive in his left hand. Chantel was in the kitchen. Lee Yong was at his desk reviewing the board motion documents that Park Jin-soo had filed 3 hours earlier. 40 pages of carefully assembled argument for his removal. His medical records reduced to ammunition. His entire life's work balanced on the edge of a boardroom vote scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. He had read the same paragraph 4 times without absorbing a single word. "You need to see something," Marcus said. "Both of you." Something in his voice made Li Yong put the papers down. They sat on the couch, not close, not far, the particular distance of two people who have stopped pretending the distance is comfortable, while Marcus opened his laptop and plugged in the drive. Hotel security pulled this 2 hours ago, Marcus said. 40th floor. The night of the gala. 11 minutes before the drug took full effect on both of you. He pressed play and stepped back. The footage was grainy the way hotel security footage always is, washed in the particular gray-green of cameras that record everything and illuminate nothing. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. The location was the edge of the catering station on the 40th floor. Chantel saw herself first. Moving fast, efficient, one earbud in, breaking down her equipment with the focused energy of someone who had a 6 a.m. start the next morning and needed to be done. Then Li Yong walked into frame. She watched him stop when she nearly collided with him. Watched him stand there for 4 full seconds after she went back to work. That detail she remembered, that specific startled stillness. Then he said something. She responded without turning around. He stayed. They talked for 11 minutes. She watched herself laugh at something he said. A real laugh, head tilted back, completely unguarded, and felt the strangeness of seeing her own face do something she had no memory of doing. She watched him watch her laugh. And then, at the 8-minute and 40-second mark, she watched Li Yong reach out and with 2 fingers, gently, completely naturally, tuck a loose lock behind her ear. The footage continued. Neither of them on screen reacted as though anything significant had occurred, because to them in that moment nothing had. It was the gesture of a man whose hands had already made a decision his mind had not yet been informed of. Marcus stopped the footage. The room was completely silent. Chantel could not look at the screen. She could not look at Li Yong. She looked at her own hands in her lap and felt something move through her chest that she had no language for and no defense against. Li Yong was looking at the frozen frame on the screen. His own hand. Her hair. 8 minutes and 40 seconds. We were real, he said, very quietly. Not to Marcus. Not to the room. Before any of this. We were already real and neither of us remembered it. Chantel felt her throat tighten in a way she refused to let become anything visible. The board meeting is in 12 hours, Marcus said carefully. Park Jin-soo has the votes. Han So-yeon's statement is everywhere. And someone leaked your diagnosis to Kang's personal advisor an hour ago. He paused. I need to know how you want to fight this. Li Yong finally looked away from the screen. He looked at Chantel. She was already looking at him. The 11 minutes sat between them like something alive. Proof of a feeling neither of them had manufactured. Neither of them had performed, and neither of them could take back even if they wanted to. Together, Li Yong said. Chantel held his gaze for one long moment. Then she stood up, smoothed her dress, and looked at Marcus with the calm, focused energy of a woman who had rebuilt from nothing before and was not remotely afraid to do it again. Tell me everything Park Jin-soo thinks he knows, she said, and then I'll tell you what he missed. Marcus looked at her, then at Li Yong. Then he sat down and opened his laptop. Outside, Seoul burned through the night, completely indifferent to the 3 people in a 42nd floor apartment who were about to dismantle a conspiracy with 12 hours on the clock and 11 minutes of footage that changed everything. This is not over. It is just beginning. We were real. Before any of this. We were already real and neither of us remembered it. He said it quietly. Not to Marcus. Not to the room. He said it to her. Think about everything it cost this man to say those 4 words. The control. The walls. The 15 years of keeping every feeling measured and managed and at a safe, accountable distance. And here he is, looking at 11 minutes of footage. Seeing his own hands make a decision he didn't consciously make. And choosing, for the first time, not to lock it away. The board vote is in 12 hours. This is the moment everything they have built, together accidentally, against every plan either of them had, gets put on the line. Subscribe. Comment together right now if you believe they make it through. And do not miss what comes next.